A few of you seemed a bit worried when I posted a picture of my custom painted NZXT Kraken X62. You saw a white radiator, I said I painted it, and I guess you assumed I used acrylic or plasti dip or something. I understand, I mean that's what most people would use to paint other components in the case, but because the radiator is designed specifically to dissipate heat, I used engine enamel, which is, most of the time it's a ceramic based engine enamel, so it's going to be rated for up to 500 degrees Celsius of heat output on whatever surface it's coated on. This stuff is rated for engines, that's why it's called engine enamel, so it's perfectly safe to use in something like a computer. Now the painting process itself is very simple. If you're up for the task, I mean it's not going to take you longer than maybe an hour or two to do this, as long as you let the paint dry properly in between coats. You'll end up with a nice clean finish. You also want to make sure that your radiator is not dirty, covered with dust or dirt or anything like that before you paint, because any particle that's on the radiator before you paint will be trapped underneath that coat permanently unless you try to dig it out, in which case you'll end up with a really nasty scar on that finished product. The painting process took me about 45 minutes. I applied 3 solid coats and then just applied a light 4th coat over the areas where I thought it wasn't as white as I wanted. Remember, painting over a black surface, so you want to make sure that you're applying thick enough coats to where you don't have splotches of kind of a semi-gray area where that white isn't completely covering the black color in the radiator. Something you want to make sure that you do before you begin painting, of course, is make sure that you mask off any areas that you don't want paint being applied, that you don't want paint permanently sticking there. It's going to be very difficult to remove engine enamel after the fact. I've had to use what do they call it, nail polish remover, acetone, things like that to remove this in the past. It does work, but only on super smooth metallic surfaces, and something like this, what do they call it, braided cable here, these braided pipes that run down to the water block. It's going to be a lot more difficult to remove engine enamel from that. So what I did was take just some old masking tape. I also took some duct tape to cover the area closest to the radiator. I tried to get as far down that tube as I could in order to minimize the amount of overspray onto that tube leading to the water block. And I still ended up with a partially painted tube at the very base of where it connects to the radiator. I expected that. I did try to take a knife and just kind of scrape away that upper layer of engine enamel that stuck to it. It looks decent. So from about a foot or two away, you can't really tell that I oversprayed. This is just something that you can't really get away from because the tube is flexible. So whenever you mask the tape off at that base, that tube's going to end up being pulled to one side or the other because the water block is attached to it. So when that tube kind of leans one direction, it's going to expose an area that was previously covered by tape, and that's where the paint oversprays. I mean, there's probably better ways to do it than how I did it. I just wanted to get it out of the way quickly without creating a big mess. Also, be sure that you're doing this in an area that's conducive to proper paint drying. If you are in an area where it's fairly hot or humid, you might want to do this inside in a closed-off masked area. I don't have anything fancy like that, nor the space, frankly, in this apartment. So I did it on my balcony, but it's November here, and I live in the northern hemisphere, which means winter is fastly approaching. It's about time. It's been fairly hot recently, and it's kind of strange, but yeah, it's getting cool now, so it was a decent climate for proper paint drying, and that's something you want to be wary of. If it's fairly humid outside and hot, the paint's not going to dry quick enough, and at the same time you get a lot of water, just moisture trapped underneath layers of paint that can prevent the paint from settling into that glossy finish, which is what this is. You can buy engine enamel in a matte finish or a gloss finish. I wanted this to be glossy because it makes it look more metallic, and it blends in with the rest of the components in Heisenberg. Please be sure that whatever you're painting is dry, by the way, before you touch it, because if you do touch it and it's not dried, you're going to end up with some ugly fingerprints just stamped into the paint, and that's how it's going to dry from now on. And don't waste your time trying to smooth that out. That's just a lost cause at that point. You might want to just either try to remove the paint altogether and start from scratch, or just keep applying coats until that fingerprint or fingerprints go away. So make sure that it's dry. I recommend anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes per coat. I don't know what it says on here, how long to wait, but yeah, I don't think you should expect to wait any longer than that if your climate is suitable for the painting. If it's rather hot, I would push that to maybe an hour, just because the paint's going to dry a bit slower where it's more humid and just warmer in general. And the finished product, I'm honestly very happy with it. There is one area of overspray. I sprayed a little too much in one spot and the paint started to run down and then kind of blotched up right there. It's a bit thicker than the areas around it, but for the most part, everything's very smooth. The finish applied nicely, and I'm glad I went with the gloss instead of the matte for this radiator. Now, if you're interested in temperatures, here you go. This will also tell you how efficient the X62 is at cooling a CPU. So our hottest core under IDA64 for 10 minutes with a 5820K i7 clocked to 4.5 gigahertz with 72 degrees Celsius. And the line underneath that, I know they look fairly similar, that was after painting the X62. Check that out, 1 degree difference, 73, and it was actually the same core too that got that 1 degree hotter. So that's it. So from 72 to 73 degrees Celsius, I'm saying that that's probably within the margin of error. This is 100% safe to use on pretty much anything. You can use this on any heat sink, any radiator, without cutting into your core temperatures too much, without causing those thermals to increase by any substantial amount. So yeah, you can paint a radiator and be okay with it. I am very happy with the X62 in general as well. It's a great cooler. I haven't noticed, to be honest, a big difference between the X61's ability to cool a CPU and this one. They appear to be about the same, and I'm not sure about the pumps inside of both, or whether they changed anything like that. And honestly, the X60, the first NZXT Kraken AIO, was about the same as both of those two. So the improvements there aren't that substantial, but there aren't many improvements to be made. This is about as good as you can get for a 280mm AIO, and you can find it. I don't know when it's going to be available. I'm pretty sure it's been released, but it's hard to find them. I will have a link to the Amazon and Newegg sites that are selling this particular unit here that's not painted in white, but that you can get in black and paint whatever color you want if you wish in this video's description. Check those out, and be sure to let me know if you have one, what you think of it in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down. If you do feel the complete opposite, or if you hate everything about life, be sure to click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Stay tuned for other interesting stuff here on Salazar Studio. This is Salazar Studio. Thanks for learning with us.